Welcome everyone to AuditNet's Training Without Travel webinars, IDEA software training via practical application, presented jointly by AuditNet and Richard Cascarino and Associates. Today's webinar is IDEA software training, and I believe Richard, that first slide.
I've overshot you, sorry.
Yeah. There we go, reporting using IDEA. Richard, is that the session for today?
That is the session. Whoops, beg your pardon. Let me bring up the correct session, that would help.
That's what I thought. It was importing reports into IDEA report.
Correct.
Okay, good.
So it is the one that you think it is. It's not the one that I had up there. I will pull it up right now. I apologize profusely. IDEA Series 2015, IDEA Series 5.
Okay, there we go. Well, we'll start over again. Welcome everyone to AuditNet's Training Without Travel webinars, IDEA software training via practical application, presented jointly by AuditNet, Richard Cascarino and Associates. Today's webinar is importing data from reports using the IDEA Report Reader. My name is Jim Kaplan. I'm founder and owner of AuditNet, and I'll be moderating today's webinar. Today's presenter and subject matter expert is Richard Cascarino, Principal of Richard Cascarino and Associates. Let me have Richard introduce himself, give you a brief overview of his background, and then I'll cover the housekeeping items, disclaimer, and important information about the AuditNet IDEA partnership. Richard?
Thanks, Jim. I apologize for that. I was changing one of the questions and got the two webinar 4 and webinar 5 mixed up on the screen. So once again, my apologies. As Jim said, I'm Richard Cascarino. I'm the subject matter expert, although not necessarily the PowerPoint expert. I'm a principal of Richard Cascarino and Associates based in Steamboat Springs in Colorado and in Johannesburg in South Africa. My background, I've got a depressing number of years experience in IT, in IT audit, in IT audit training, and in consultancy. I'm a past president of the Institute of Internal Auditors in South Africa, a member of ISACA, the Certified Fraud Examiners, and the Institute of Internal Auditors. I'm also the author of the Auditor's Guide to IT Auditing, Corporate Fraud and Internal Control, and you'll see on there a book called Internal Auditing, an Integrated Approach. That's the second edition. The third edition, I've just been told, is due out in April. So that should be coming your way in April. Okay, that's me, and that's my background. Let me hand you back to Jim so that he can take you through the housekeeping for the webinar.
Thanks, Richard. I've sent out the slides this morning, so I'm not going to dwell on these very much. I just wanted to mention that the webinar is being recorded, and you will receive a link to that recording. That should be going out tomorrow. In addition, because NASBA rules do require us to ask polling questions during the webinar, you must answer all of the polling questions in order to receive the CPE certificate. So please make sure that you answer all of the polling questions if you are looking for CPE for today. In addition, if you're joining us from a laptop or a tablet device, you may not be able to respond to the questions, so please accumulate all of your answers into a single email and send those to us, and we will record your answers in the NASBA required document. You can submit questions via the chat box on your screen. We'll answer them either during or at the conclusion. I'll be moderating those questions, and I'll pass them along to Richard if he doesn't see them when they're coming in. You will be able to provide some feedback after the webinar is over. You will receive a questionnaire, so please take some time to respond to that to help us improve our webinars. The next slide contains the disclaimer. And again, I will let you read that. I will, before I turn it over to Richard, I wanted to mention one additional item. AuditNet has entered into an agreement to provide access to subscriber content to IDEA Premium supported users. If you're currently a Premium supported IDEA user, you can access the AuditNet content at no cost. For more information, go to the AuditNet site for details on how to log in and access more than 2,300 templates. We've included this on the supplemental information slide that's at the end of the presentation, so you should be able to connect to it from there. At this point, I'd like to turn the floor back to Richard so he can share with you how to get the most from IDEA software and today's session. Richard?
Thanks, Jim. I should point out that stuff that Jim's got up on the website is well worth having. If you are a premium user, go and have a look. If you're not a premium user, you might want to consider that. And if you're not a premium user and you don't want to consider that, you might want to consider hooking up specifically to AuditNet anyway, because it's very valuable stuff. Okay, what are we going to do today? We're going to have a look at bringing in our data from reports. Now, today we're going to look at doing the basic stuff, bringing it in, bringing in the easy stuff. On the next webinar, we're going to do the advanced stuff, bringing it in with multi-lines, bringing it in with floating traps, etc. Okay, so this is the beginners. So we'll take a look at how we examine the data and its layout. We'll have a look at selecting a sample line to work on and deciding which of the sample lines will be an anchor line. How we identify to IDEA that this is the key line. We identify a trap, and how we identify fields within that line. We will save the layers. We'll take a look at scanning for errors, previewing the database, and then creating an append layer within it, arranging the field order and saving that template, then converting that file and bringing it straight into IDEA. Now, it sounds very complicated. It's not really. When you first do it, the first exercise that you do, you say, what the hell am I doing here? I'm not sure. I'm all over the place. Don't worry. We'll take our time. We'll go through it. Okay. So as with all of our other webinars that we've been doing in this series, first thing we have to do is start IDEA. So starting IDEA the same way we start programs, IDEA, set up our working data, and go into our samples project. And now we're going to start off by importing a file. But just to give you a little change from what we've done previously, we're going to import a file, but we're not going to import what we've been doing up till now, our sales file. To import a file, as always, we start in our home and we go to our Desktop Plus. That takes us into our import assistant. Now what we're looking for is a print file. So we're looking at a print report and Adobe PDF. Interestingly enough, a print file and a text file are two different things. So we're going to go to print report and PDF. And the file I'm going to pick up is a file called weblog. So under my file name, I'll go out and I'll go into my IDEA projects. I'll go into that tutorial one. And down towards the bottom, we'll see one called weblog.prn, print. So I'll say next on that. And it now takes us into our report reader. Okay, so what you're seeing on the screen is what your report would look like if it was printed. And you can see there we've got the week number that was printed in, the date that we're talking about, the site that someone went into, the time that they logged in, the duration, and who the user was who logged in. Now it's nice to have that, it's nice to have a printout of that. But what I want to be able to do is see who logged in where when, who was logging in at a time they shouldn't have been, who was logging into a site that they shouldn't have been logging into, who is making excessive use of the internet. So I need to be able to analyze all of this data, and I can't do that from a printout. So somehow I'm going to have to bring that in and get hold of the detail. And you can see this goes on and on and on and on for page after page after page. So I need to be able to identify all of this. If we look at it, we can see here we have a line with report headings: date, site, time, duration, user, etc. We have another line above it which is giving us our week. And down here we have all of our raw data, our detail lines. Okay? And where we normally start with our data. If you look at that, you'll see that immediately below that date is a line, and if I carry on across, you'll see that the line with the time on it is underneath that. So that's not one line, that's two lines or one record. Okay? So we've got the site, and then it carries on to the next line, and it goes all the way across until we get the user's name. So if I click on that line with the user's name, I want to highlight it. Now if I click on that, it will ask me, what do I want to do? Well, I want to create, and I want to create a standard layer. We've got some choices. We can create a standard layer, and you can see there when I'm sitting above it, that's used for importing reports where the data is already aligned in columns. If we had totals and things, or where the information is kind of moving across, then I would not have a standard layer. If I close that down just now and we look back, you'll see that data, HTTP, direct, etc., that is longer than that, and that is longer than that. So these will not necessarily go in vertical lines. So that would not be a standard layer. I'm going to pick this one up, and I'm going to use that as my standard layer, and I'll say yes. Okay. Once I've said yes, you'll see, I'll put this up to full size so that you can see it. Once I've said yes, you'll see that up at the top we have a line that's highlighted in yellow. And this is my field editor. So there's my field detail line is going to go up here. And you can see there I've got those things in there which make that line unique to any other line. Okay. Now the unique feature in this line, if we look, that is different to the next line, that is different to the next line, the time is different to the next line, but that colon in the time is unique. It's there, it's there, it's there, it's there, it's in every single line. So if I go there, I'm going to have to create a trap for this. So if I go above it into that yellow area, and just above it, I put in a colon. you'll see that every line with the time, duration and username on it has now been highlighted. So that has effectively created for me a trap. Okay. And if I go over there, I can put two ends. Now what I've got is, for that line to be highlighted, it has to have a colon there, and then it has to have two numeric items. So we've got the 4, 6, and anything else that follows. And that avoids me picking up something that's just got a colon in that line. It's possible that this could go all the way across there and have a colon. So I'm saying that's not enough. I want a colon and two numerics. And that has now identified all the similar lines are highlighted in blue. Now I've got choices. I've got numeric traps. I can have text traps. I can have a space trap. And I can have a non-blank trap. So if I was picking it up here with a non-blank trap in front of that 625, it would pick up the 117, the 1787, it would pick up the 4168. It would not pick up that 928 because that field would be a blank. So I can either say include everything or exclude those. Okay. Are we happy so far? Okay. If you're not sure how I got there, let me close it down and do it again. So I will close that down, and I will close my report reader down, and cleverly I've actually closed down IDEA. So here we are, back in IDEA. I went to a print report, I picked up my print weblog, and it fired up my report reader. I looked through my report reader, I decided which was going to be the baseline that everything else is going to be based around, and that's going to be the one with the name in it. And if I just move on that, I've highlighted it, I'm creating a standard layer, and now I want to identify that. So up here I'm going to put a colon above the last colon, and then two numeric traps. So I've now got all of those lines highlighted, which is terrific. Okay. It took a while the first time. Going back into it didn't take nearly so long. Okay, the difference, I've been asked what's the difference between a standard layer and a floating layer. Okay, let me close that down and take out that layer, and let me pick up one of the other ones with the HTTP on it. If I tried to create a standard layer on that one, okay, I would have severe difficulty, because there's what it's seeing in the first one, but that is a different length to that, is a different length to that, is a different length to that. So this is not going to come in neat little columns. That would be a floating layer, because the end of a field is going to float. I'm not going to tell it that's a time field, that's a name field. If I'm turning around with this, that's going to be constant, http://, but the next field isn't. So if I tried to create bigmullah.com and said, well, let me say it, I was going to take that as a trap, and I'm going to put a colon // So it's now highlighted all of those. If I now wanted to pick that field up, and I said that's it there, I'm missing bits out here, I've got too much space there, and as I go down, you'll see that there are other pieces which are overflowed. So I can't define that as a standard layer, because it's looking for data to be in columns. That would be a floating layer where instead of vertically, it looks horizontally. Okay. So that's the essential difference. You'll see just now, because we'll have to identify both standard layers and floating layers within this one. Okay. Okay. So I picked up that line. I created a standard layer, and I put in my colon numeric. Okay. We're happy so far. Now I need to define where my fields are on this line. So the first thing I want to do is pick up the time, and the time starts there. So I'll go up between the yellow bars, and I'll click on the 1.6 and drag it across to the 4.6 and release. Okay. And if you look, you'll see that on the right-hand side, I now have field details. And I've got layer information. It's a standard layer. This is layer 1 because I can have multiple standard layers. The field information, the field name is column 1657, etc. I don't want it called that. I'm going to change that name, and I'm going to call it time. The type is time. There are no decimal places, and it's hours, colon, minutes, colon, seconds. I'm happy with that. Okay, so I'll move to my next one. Now my next one, I'm not exactly sure where it fits, so I'm going to try it from one position out and take it to there. Standard layer, it says the name is column 625. Well, that's going to be duration. How do I know that? Because I've chosen to call it that. It's numeric. There are no decimal places. There's no implied decimal places. So I'm happy with all of that. Everyone happy so far, I hope. So my next field is going to be that name. And I'll pick it up from the Z, and I'll go, or the Z, sorry, and go right across, and I'll say it's a standard layer, it's in layer 1, name is Zumach Marta. Well, I don't want it called Zumach Marta, I want it called name, or username. It is a character field, there is no mask. And you can see the position there. This is offset in position 109 and is going along for 27 characters. Now it's probably not 27, it's probably 25. So I can go in there and I can reduce it down to 25 if I so choose. I can run that down very quickly and see right away there's someone in there, Velasquez. So that's going to be bigger than 25. So I'll push it back up to 27, possibly even 28, all the way across. Okay. And when I'm happy, I can save that layer with the big green tick. Okay. So I have now created my field layer, my first layer, which is going to be containing all of that information. That's my standard layer. I'm now going to create another layer. And this is going to be an append layer. So the question now is, which layer do I want to make my append layer? So I'll go up to the top, and I want to pick up the date. the line with the date on it. Okay? So this one up here. But I only want to pick up the date part of it. I don't want all of this other stuff with the site. I just want that part at the moment. So I'll highlight that, and it's asking me what kind of a layer do I want. Now this is going to be an append layer, but it's still a standard layer. So I'm still up here. And all I want is that date. So I'm going to put an anchor in there, and that's highlighted that line. Okay. So now I'm going to pick up my date, which goes from there to there. And over on the right-hand side, you'll see I now have another standard layer, layer 2. The name of it is going to be, funnily enough, date. Now it's recognized by scanning it that there is a type date, and it says it looks to me like it's year year hash or slash month month dash day day. But now I've got a problem, because you'll see that date only appears on the first line. I want that date to appear on every line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down here to where it says blank cells. That's a blank cell, that's a blank cell, that's a blank cell. And I'm going to say use the value from the previous record. Now what that's going to do is for that one it'll put that date, for that one it'll put the date. As I go down it will put that date in until it hits this date. And then it will start putting that date in below it. Okay, so I now have my dates defined in a separate layer. I'll give it a big green tick to save the layer. That's all I wanted, was just the date. Okay, if I want to look at the layers, I can click on the heading layers and go into something called the layer manager. And you'll see there's my base layer, layer 1. There's layer 2. If I want to look at the currently defined layers, I can double click on there. And it will show me that one. Okay. It's also showing me layer 2. I can go back into my layer manager. I can go into my base layer and say I want to edit that base layer. So now I'm in layer 1, which has got my username, followed by my next field is my duration, and then going further across, my next field is the name. So I can change anything here, I can increase it, fiddle around with it, do whatever I want. Okay, until I'm happy, and then I can save that layer again. Okay, also within the layer manager, I can delete a layer. So let me go back. Let me go back across to where I've got my date, and I'll repeat it. I'll go through it again. So I'll go into that layer manager, and I'll say take layer 2 and delete it. Okay. So now that's gone. To get it back, if I made a mistake the first time, all I have to do is go in there, create my standard layer, put in my anchor, which is going to be that hyphen before the 05, click across on the date, and change the name to date, and save the layer. And that's me saved it again as layer 2. Happy. So now we want to go and have a look at this lot. Okay, we're going to pick up the site fields. In this case, it looks as though I'm highlighting the same layer, but I'm not. And in this case, I'm actually going to do it as if it was a standard layer. I've got a question. Forgot to define the blank cells. Wow! Someone's awake and listening. This is excellent. Okay, let me go back. What can I do? Well, I could go in on my layers into my layer manager. There's my layer 2. I could delete it and start again. Or, as I said before, I can edit it. And down there we've got the blank cells leave blank. I'm going to click on and use the value from the previous record. And it's as simple as that. Okay. So I'm going to pick that layer up again. This is going to be my third layer. Again, I'm going to create it this time simply as a standard layer. I want to identify it uniquely, so I will pick up here that : // But I don't want the date. I've already got the date, so I will pick it up from the HTTP and go sliding across. And I don't know how many there are going to be, so I'll take the whole lot. Anything that's in there. Now you can see we're an offset 10. That should actually be one further over. So I could pick that up and move it across. And that moves to 11. Or I could have done it here and moved it to 11 on the right hand side. That is going to be my site. It's a character field. Blank cells. Again, I want to use the field, the value from the previous, so that if they log on to the same one twice running, we don't want any blanks. And again, I'll save that layer. So now I've got all of that data defined so far. What's currently missing is that week up here. I'm not worried about the titles, but I am worried about, I want that week 2 of 2009 to go in. So again, I'll pick that up. I'll create a standard layer. I need to identify the week. So it's going to be something with a colon in there. And there's my week, which is going to be called, funnily enough, week. Numeric, and again I'll use the value, blank cells, I will use the value from the previous line. Now you see there are no blank cells, but this is all going to go into one record. So I will give it a big green tick. Now I can do various things at this point. One of the things I can do is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The 11th one across is a yellow box with the red tick. I can scan it for errors. And it says there are no validation errors in this report. Now that doesn't tell me I've got it right. It tells me I haven't got anything syntactically wrong. If I made that field too short, it's not going to tell me. But I've not defined anything as numeric when it should be alpha, or date when it should be numeric, etc. So what can I do now? Well, before I go and bring all of this into IDEA, useful always to preview the database and see if you've got what you think you've got. So there are all the times, the duration, the username, the date, and it's plugged the date where appropriate. These are the sites that they've been to, and there's the week, and it's plugged the week appropriately as well. So if I'm happy with that, Then I can say close it. Up until this point, I can still go back in and change anything I choose to change. If I now go File and say that I want to import that into IDEA, okay, import the report into IDEA, the first thing it's going to ask me is, do I want to save the template? Because it says you've done a lot of work. Do you really want to just throw all this away? No, I will import it. Proceed with the import, yes. You must save the template file in order to continue, so that the next time you get the same printout coming in, you don't have to go through all this again. So I'm going to save it as weblog. It's asking me to give it a descriptive name, so I'm going to call it something exceedingly creative. I'm going to call it weblog. Do I wish to generate field statistics? Well, there's a lot of individual fields that I'm not really all that worried about, so I'll simply say finish. And there's all the data brought in. Straight from the printout, I have all of this now in there. If I wish to go back and do the whole thing again, let me delete that. Let me delete that. If I wish to start the whole thing again with next week's weblog, I can simply go in and say, go in on my print reporter and Adobe PDF. I'm going to go back into my tutorial and pick up weblog again. But instead of having to go through all that rigmarole of defining everything again, I can click on optional template, and there's a weblog template that I just created. So if I say I want to bring it in now, there it is, as I defined it. So when you first do it for a report, you look at it and you think, oh, how much work is this going to be? Because that was a fairly simple report. But once you have defined it once and set it up once, then pulling it back in is a piece of cake. So let's go and have a look at some of the polls. I will launch poll 1. As Jim said, if you wish CPD, you have no choice, you have to answer. You don't have to answer correctly, but you do have to answer. Data lines are identified using the anchor editor, an anchor trap, numeric traps, or non-blank traps. Please vote now. I'll give it another 10 seconds so the last 2 or 3 can vote. And we will close it off and share the results. And the bulk of people as you should be able to see. I'll tell you what's on it. The bulk of people went for an anchor trap, which is correct. You're using the anchor editor, but that doesn't identify the line. It's an anchor trap which could be numeric, it could be alpha, it could be non-blank. There's a variety that it could be. Okay. Let us move on. So now that I've got all of this, now what? Well, that depends. What do you want to do with it? Why did you bring it in the first place? So I could go into data and I want to extract information. How do I do an extract, a direct extract of data? Well, I do it from analysis. And there's my extract, direct, and I'm going to extract basically for something later. I'm going to change the name to Logs at Night, because I want to see who's been logging in after hours. And the way I'm going to get that is I'm going to create a filter. I will go back. For those of you who weren't here on the previous parts, we're going to go into our equation editor, which is the little thing that looks like a calculator in the middle. And I'm going to say I want to extract where the time up at the top. To get it up into the equation, we double click. Now I want it to be greater than, and I want it to be greater than 8 o'clock. But time is a time field. So I can't simply say 8 o'clock. I'm going to have to put it into quotations. I can either type in the quotations, or I can click up here to use the quotes where I'll encapsulate strings, dates, or times. And the time that I'm interested in is 20:00:00. Okay. Now that will give me people who sign in after 8 o'clock at night, but I also want the people who are signing in early, 3 o'clock in the morning. So I'll click on the OR. And the OR is time. This time is going to be less than, there's my quotations, 06:00:00. And if I validate that, it tells me I've got a valid equation. If those were missing, those quotations were missing, it would show it up initially in red. But if I ignored that and simply said validate, it tells me you've got a syntax error. And that's where the syntax error is, in that bit there. So I need to put my quotes back in again. And if I validate now, it tells me it's okay. So I can give it the big green tick. So what this is going to do now is, starting from the start, and I've got 198 records, so from record 1 to 198, extract all of them if they fulfill that criteria, and create me a file, a database called Logs at Night. And there's my Logs at Night, 66 of them. So from here I can see that someone's signing on at 3 o'clock in the morning. Aha, www.gambling.com. That's interesting. Gambling. How many other people are gambling? Well, what I could do to find out how many other people are gambling is I could simply go up to the top and pick up that field that says gambling. Which is up here. And you can see in there, if I double click, it's showing me these are all of the fields, there's my site, this is it, etc. I don't want to do anything to it. I don't want to delete it. I don't want to do anything. I can simply cancel them there, but there it is there. If I right-click, I can say display all records containing that one field. And it's Mr. Collins. And it's the same time on different dates. So it looks like Mr. Collins has a gambling habit. Unfortunately, Mr. Collins is our Chief Financial Officer, and he's signing in at that time. So I'm rather unhappy about that. To get rid of that and go back to the full thing, I'll simply go where it says criteria site is exactly equal to http:/gambling, etc., and clear it. I could take that field and look at anything where the word gambling appears and pick that out as well. Okay. What else do I have? Alligator Lotto, Lotto advertising. There's a lot of Lotto. There's also quite a bit of pharmacology. Someone importing drugs. Who's importing my drugs? And so on and so forth. So depending on what it is I'm looking for, this is the kind of thing that's actually fascinating to do. And as an auditor, you can sit and you can analyze and you slice it this way and you slice it that way and you look at this and you look at it that way and you look at it the next way, and you can spend days going through a big database. And you have absolutely nothing out at the end worthwhile, because all you were doing was browsing. You had no idea when you went in there what you were looking for. If I'm looking for people who are logging in after hours, I've got it. These people are logging in after 8 o'clock at night. Or I could have changed that and made that people who are looking in only after midnight. Or I could have said only going into certain websites. And I could have said where the website name includes the field. So I can do all of those things with the data, but you need to know what it is that you're looking for before you go in there. Okay. Happy. Good. That takes us to our next polling question. And our next polling question should be a piece of cake. Repeating data can be specified using multi-line, mask, use the value from the previous record, or filters. Once again, all vote now. We have 90%. We have 100%. So I will close and share the results. I'm not sure why you're not seeing share the results. Go to webinars behaving strangely. You should be seeing that. But not a problem. I will read to you what is on it. And what is on it is that the majority of people chose use the value from the previous record, which is of course correct. Remember what we said, if you want that data to come out as we did with the date, we're saying if it's blank, don't use blank, use the value from the previous record. Okay. So, let me hide the results. Not that you're seeing the results, but never mind. And let's go back and look at another file. Slightly more complicated one. We're going to bring it in. How do we bring it in? Once again, we're going to go to our home and to our Desktop Plus. We're going to go to Print Report in Adobe PDF. And we'll go back and bring it in again from our tutorial folder. But this time the one that we're looking for is a travel report. Called, funnily enough, travel report. It's brought it in. And now we have much more like the sort of thing you'll normally get in a report, where we're sitting with report and travel expenditures for the month of that. There's the date, the purpose for conference in this case. These are the towns. And we've got some totals. There's the purpose, work, etc. So we're getting things with totals and with different classes, and we want to be able to sort that one out. So we've got a report heading, we've got our date, we'll need the date, we'll want the month of January, we'll want the purpose, and we'll want all of this lot. Okay, and then as we go down, we'll want to pick up that total. So where do we start? Well, first thing we want to do is decide where our detail line is. And our detail line, once again, is going to be the name that we're going to use. So there's the name of the airlines. We're going to pick up that line. That's going to be our raw data. So I'll say yes. And how am I going to identify that? It's a standard layer. It's going to go up there into our field editor. Now, what is unique in this area? Looking for the uniqueness in this particular field. I can see that we've got the date, we've got the amount, we've got all of this unique information, and I want to trap that with that pin. Okay, so I'm going to put it immediately above the pin information. Up here, and I'm going to say numeric, 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 numeric. And it's not going to give me it. I'm picking up that, creating a standard layer. Why is it not going to give me it? Because I simply want that with a numeric trap. So putting in N for numeric isn't giving me a trap. It's saying if that field contains the letter N. In this case it doesn't. So if I want numeric traps along there, I'm going to define them. Okay, now that should have picked up all of my data, but not the total, not the purpose, not the pin name, etc. So I know that I've got it right. So what am I going to define? Now I need to define all of these fields again. So I'm going to define them all, and if you look on your slide 23, you'll see there are the definitions. So at your own leisure, you can go and try it. I'll give you 5 minutes and then I'll follow you. On the slide before it says note the field data appear, change the field data information where required, repeat for all fields, save the layer, and then we'll validate and adjust. As I say, I'll give you 5 minutes and then I'll join you. I think it's highly unfair that I have to do all the thinking. So it's your turn to think. I'll do the first one to get you started. We want the PIN number. There it is there. I will pick it up and over on the right hand side in field details. There's my PIN. Now it thinks it's numeric. In fact it's not. It's character. So I will change it to character. I can see that it's starting at 0 and it's 8 characters long, so I'm happy with that. And now you can progress from there with all of the rest. And again we can use a show of hands and see who's finished first. If you have any problems, just send me a message on chat. We have hands up. I've got questions coming in saying, can I use January 2008 to append the month field and ignore the date information? Well, that depends. If you are looking for it only for January, then you don't even need to define the date at all, because this is going to go out in a file that you're going to call January expenses or January travel. But if you want to analyze it and find who traveled when to where, you're going to need that date field. Okay. Seems like some of the actual widths recommended in the slide are not sufficient to capture all the data, and that's exactly what you will get. Okay. When you are given it the information that this is what it will look like, it will not be accurate. So you have to take everything you're told with a pinch of salt. Okay, let me run through it quickly. We're going to pick up our employee class, which I know is 2 digits. And there it is up there, DA. So that's going to be our employee class. It is a character field. I'm happy with that. Next field I want is my date. And there it is there, which is going to be called, funnily enough, date. It says it's character. It's not. It's a date. And it's looking for the mask. Now I can look at that and I can see that what we've got is day slash month slash 4 years. Okay, I now need to pick up my amount. Now according to this, the amount is 6 digits long. In fact, it's not 6 digits long. So it's not going to start in position 39, it's going to start somewhere about there. It's saying here that the actual width is 10 for that one. So I'm happy with that. Please modify my invalid date time mask, because I don't have a date time mask. So it's day slash month slash 4 years. Now I can move across. And if I look at that, I'm seeing offset 39. Well, offset 39 is in the wrong place. I'm going to lose that one there. So I'm going to have to take that and drag it over, maybe 2 or 3, and then take it and drag it the other way. And what have we got? We've got the amount. It is numeric. There are 2 decimal places. You can see that on the screen. As I said, they'll give you a layout and they'll give you, this is where everything is. Don't believe it. Look at the data. Next one's a town. The town is starting in position 37. And it's for 6 digits. That's not going to fit. It's going to be over here somewhere. So there's Dallas. That's going to be my town. It's character. I'm happy with that. Next one's my airline, which is in this case is American Airlines, but I'll take it right across to somewhere about here. Let's see if I go down, does it fit? Yep, it looks as though it's fitting everything in. So I'll call that airline. Here's my airlines. It is character. I'm happy with that. And you can see I've got it for 22 characters. The mask says 17 characters. Next one I want is the air miles. Now unless we have someone who's flying long distance, it's probably not going to be more than 9,900 miles. But it could be 10,000 if someone's flying internationally. So let's move it out. And we'll call that one miles. It is numeric. I'm happy with that. And finally, my last category is my travel class. It is character. Travel class. Okay. And when I'm happy, I can save that one. Now I need to pick up the layer for the conference, for the purpose. So I'll pick up that one, create a standard layer. Okay, and again I need an anchor. My anchor is going to be that colon. And that's picked up conference. And if I look below, it's picked up training, it's picked up work, picked up a whole pile of things. So now I can go and say I'll take the conference part and I'll call it purpose. And for this one, I want to use the value from the previous file, from the previous record. It is character. I'm happy with that. I'll save that layer. Now I have a choice. I could go down here and pick up the total. But there's a problem picking up that total because that's going to give me the total across the way. And I don't really want that. So I'm going to leave the total out at the moment. I'll do a check to scan for errors. There are no validation errors. So now I can save that. But before I do, once again, I will preview the database. There's my PIN. There's my employee class, the date, the amount, the town, the airline, and the purpose. Okay, and if I look down, I can go all the way down and look at all of these. When I'm happy, I can say I will try once again to import the report straight into IDEA, and it will tell me I can't because I haven't saved the template. So I'll save the template and I'll save it as travel report. Do I wish to generate field statistics? Nope. And I'll save it as travel report. I'm happy with that. And there's my printout imported straight into IDEA. Okay. So there's my PIN, employee class, date, amount, town, airline. And once again, I could change that around. I could say, okay, let me take my purpose, highlight it, and click on, and move it across. I could say, let's take, for argument's sake, the travel class, and move that across. Now that's interesting. I want to find out who's been traveling first class. So if I want to do that, all I have to do is double click, and that's it in ascending order. Double click again, and that's it in descending order. So these are all the people who traveled first class. Now, that's their employee number, the PIN number. Is that person allowed to travel first class? So I can have a look at all of these and find out what class of employee is flying. Are they supposed to be able to do that? This guy's flying to Montreal in Air Canada, then he's flying to Calgary on British Airways for work purposes. These guys are flying for training purposes, also flying first class. Boy, we can afford an awful lot of first class. And then all of a sudden, we come down to the hoi polloi who are traveling in economy class. Okay. Now, I'm not saying that's right, and I'm not saying it's wrong. What I'm saying is I can use this to guide me, and then I'm going to have to go and find out, are they allowed to do that or are they not allowed to do that? Okay. So this simply gives you the data to analyze. What you're going to analyze depends on what you want to know. You can see we've got the indexes now built for travel class ascending and travel class descending. We're on descending. If I double click in there, we're now on ascending. If I take them off, we're back to it by conference, by training, etc. If I want to see which are our preferred airlines, I can double click on the airline and put that into ascending order. So these are all my Air Canada ones, British Airways and KLM. They seem to be our favourites. If that is appropriate, then I'm happy. If it's not appropriate, then I want to know who is flying on anything else. Okay. Know what you want to know. Browsing takes a lot of time, isn't terribly proving, and it tends to give the auditee the impression that you don't know what the hell you're looking for. You're just kind of browsing around. Okay, so it doesn't inspire confidence. Okay, let's go and take a look at another type of report. Again, a slightly more complicated one. So we'll go to our desktop and we'll pick up, again, a print report and Adobe. This time we're going to go into our tutorial folder again, and we're going to pick up one called Dave's Bookstore 5.txt. And I'll say next. There's two Dave's Bookstore. There's Dave's Bookstore and Dave's Bookstore 5. And you can see from this that we now have a much more complicated type of printout. Okay. Here we're sitting with a page, then we have a page break. We're sitting with an account, that's our contact name, that's the company, that's the date we shipped. Funnily enough, we're shipping out accounting books. These are the names, that's the amount, that's the telephone number for our contact, and then we move on to the next one. The next one, account number 101, actually doesn't have any books. Account number 102 splits over a page. So now we're getting a lot more complicated in how we're going to have to define this thing. And we've got headers and we've got page breaks. So once again, I need to take a look and see what I'm looking at here. Where am I going to start? Well, I'm going to create my standard layer, but what's going to be my standard layer? First thing I want to do is pick up that one there. That's my data, my raw data. Account number 100 has got 3. Account number 101 has got no transactions. Account number 102 has got no company name. Okay. And account number 102, we're sitting with James Smith. Sorry, I beg your pardon, no contact name. James Smith, our contact, has become our company. That's strange. So, we need to pick up our standard layer. Once again, we have to decide what will be our standard layer. And our standard layer is going to be there. So we want to create a standard layer. And here we have it with our shipment date, our item, and our amount. So we need to decide what is going to make that line unique from any other line on it. So we need to define our trap. What is unique? Well, that decimal point within amount is unique. So if I go there and I put in a decimal point, it's highlighted there. It hasn't highlighted anything for 101, and that's correct because we don't have anything for 101. So it's highlighted all of those. So now I have to define the shipment date in exactly the same way as before. I'll pick up my shipment date. And it's called shipment date, or whatever I want to call it. Ship date. It's not character, it's a date. Now it gets complicated because I can't see from that. I can see from that. Month, month, day, day. Because I need to tell it what the mask is. We know in this case it's month, month, slash, day, day, slash, 4 years. Now I want the title of the book. So there is Accounting 1, 2, 3. And I'll take it across a bit longer to try and get everything in. Does it look as though I've got everything in? Yep. Maybe I've got too much in. I might be eating into the amount. So there is my book title. And the book title is character. I'm happy with all of that lot. So all I need now is the amount. So I can pick up the amount and I will call it amount. Now if for any reason you end up with this too small, you can always throw it away, bring in the file again, bring in the definition and change the definition. And it will bring it back up with the correct definition then. Okay. So you don't need to be stuck. When you're happy, give it a tick. And we've got that one. Now we need to select the 3 heading lines. And I'll take all 3 of those. All 3 lines together. And I don't want that to have a trap. All I want to do is say that the first 3 lines on each page will be a header layer. So ignore anything that's on those first 3. Okay, so those 3 that are now highlighted will be ignored. And that's my header layer, so I will save that one. The next layer I want is all of that lot. So I want the account and the 3 layers. And so now I've got one layer containing the account, the name, the company, and the 3 lines of the address. So I need to anchor it somewhere above that data. Now there's my account. I can anchor it quite easily by simply typing in. There's account. Okay, so it's now highlighted all of those accounts, including the one that didn't have any purchases, and including the ones that's running over. Or is it? We have a slight problem because it's not going to go over. I'll show you how you get around that. First thing we want is our account number, so we'll pick up that and we'll call it account number, it's numeric. Next thing I want is the contact name. So that's going to be my contact. Next thing I want is the company name. So Brown and Associates is going to become company. The next part I want is address line 1. Next one I want is address line 2. And the next one I want is, well, I could say address line 3, I could say country. And that's fine. Except for one thing. If I tick that now, I say, well, I think I'm okay so far. Let me go and preview the database. So I will go in File and preview the database. I don't have the account numbers, I don't have that, I don't have that. Ouch. What did I do? I forgot to change that and say use from the previous. So I'll go into my layer manager. I don't want my base layer, I don't want my header layer, I want that layer, and I'm going to edit it. So I'll take the first field, there's my account number, I don't want to leave it blank, I want to use the value from the previous record. I'll take that one, I don't want to leave blank, I'll use the value from the previous record. Now, do I need to change anything here? Well, let's try it. I'll go into my file, because remember, all I'm doing is previewing it. I'm not doing the import yet. Aha, I'm still not getting that. So I will close that. I do need to put those in so that it will come out line by line by line. Okay. So I'll go back into my layer manager and edit it. There's my first one. Use the value from the previous. Because I'm not talking about that it's a previous company, I'm talking about for each of these data lines. Use the value from the previous one, if it's blank. Next line, again, use the value from previous. The next line, I'll use the value from the previous. And the final one, I'll use the value from the previous. And I'm happy with that. Now, we had a problem because this is not coming out. The reason that's not coming out is because there's 2 lines in there. So what I need to do now is pick up those 2 lines, create myself a layer. Again, I don't need a track for them, but I do need to tell it this is a footer layer. And now that will be ignored. And if I go and look at this, I need to go into this one, into my layer manager, go into layer 2 and edit it. And if I look at layer 2 now, and I say that one is address line 2, that one is address line 3, I need it to pick up these. So how are we going to get that to pick it up? Well, I could go and do it there, but that's kind of defeating the object of the exercise. We're sitting with everything that's supposed to be defined. So why is this not picking up? The reason was because this was defined before that was defined, before we had defined the fact that there was a space at the end. So I need to go back and take this one, go into my layer manager, pick up that layer 2 and delete it. Now I can go back in again, pick up that, and I can pick up based on, well, now there's the problem. ACC, I put in my ACC, it's picking all of these up. It's not picking those up because there's no ACC there. So how am I going to pick that one up? Have a think. I'll give you a couple of minutes to try and think it. Why did that not pick up? I'll give you a clue. The fault was not in that layer. If I pick that one up and create my standard layer, pick up my account, blank field, not quite, there's so many blank fields that if you tried to pick that up with a blank field, it wouldn't pick it up. Do you notice what's there? We've got a blank line. So what have we done? We've defined our header as being from there to there instead of being from there to there. We put the wrong header line in. If I cancel what I'm doing just now and I go into that header line, there's my header layer, and I take that and edit it, and I take that instead up one. I can take all of that out, delete my header, and now I'll take that 3 as my header. So there's my header layer. And now, if I go in to pick up this lot, and create a standard layer. It will create it, and when it's all defined, it will pick it all up. So there's my ACC, and it's now picked up all of that lot, all of that lot, and when we define all, it will pick up that one as well. Okay. Oops. So I can pick up my account. My contact. Company. Address line 1. Address line 2. Country. When I say I'm happy with that, you'll see it's still not showing up there. Okay. Now we know that that was my page break. 1, 2, 3. Oops, sorry, cancel. Let me take a look at my layer, my layer manager, and have a look at my footer layer. And my footer layer is 1, 2. Ah, so my footer layer should have been that lot. And that's going to be my I don't want to define a track because I'm not looking at that, I'm looking at a footer layer. The page break is telling it that there is data in here. If I create that, it won't let me create it as a footer layer because of that. Okay. Amazing how often you think you've got it nailed and it's saying you can't create a footer layer. So let me go into my layer manager. Why not? Because I've already got a footer layer. You can't have two footer layers. So I will delete that footer layer. And now if I go in, I can create my footer layer. And if I look and preview the database, I've done it again. I've forgotten to add in within layer 2. Don't leave it blank. 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 Can you see that this is a tedious process when you're first starting it? Okay. And what have we got here? We've got that has now floated over to there, because that layer has not gone down deep enough. If I go back in, I'll give that the big green tick, go back in on my layer manager and look at that header layer again, edit it. I need to come down one level further because that is part of my header. So I will delete that, and I will now take that to there and create that as my header. And then go back in, create my standard layer. It's a header layer. Tick it. And lo and behold, we're still not picking that up because that line there has still not been defined. Because I missed it again. My fault. So again, I can go back into my header layer and edit it. Or I can go back into my layer and delete it. And that should be from the top down to there. Is my header layer. And it's still causing me grief because of this. It's not picking up the third line of the address. If I look at that on my database, I'm picking everything up correctly, including that. So it is coming out correctly. It's not showing on the screen, but it's coming out correctly. I may have found a problem on the screen. You'll notice we don't have a contact. That's unfortunate. Actually, it's not unfortunate, it's correct. We don't have a contact. So we're happy with that. So I can actually say, go and import into data, into IDEA. I'll save the template once again. I'll call it Dave's Bookstore 5. And there it is. Okay. We don't have 101 because there were no purchases. We do have 102 because there were purchases. Happy because it's that time again. Time for me to ask you a question. Launch it. Question is, heading lines require numeric traps, alpha traps, any traps, no traps. We'll close that and hopefully share the results. It worked. And the bulk of people went for no trap. If you remember, when we went for the heading and for the footing, no trap was required. We just clicked on, this is a heading line. Okay. Once again, if I close down Dave's bookshop, and I delete the file, if I wanted to import that whole thing again with next month's figures, I can go in there, pick up, again, from the projects, Dave's bookshop, Dave's bookstore I should say, and the optional template file is now there. So it's imported it all with that again. Okay. One other thing I didn't show you, let me close that down. Oops, I beg your pardon. I forgot to hide that. Well, fortunately, I was going to do it again anyway. Let me delete Dave's bookshop, Dave's bookstore. If I brought it back in, again, I'm simply going to pick it up from Idea Projects, go down to my tutorial one, and down there's a file called Dave's Bookstore. But this time I'll pick up my optional definition file, which I just saved, which was my Dave's Bookstore. Which I had just said, or just cancelled it, that's why. I would pick it up from there and it would be away without any problem. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to pick it up, print report, tutorial, Dave's Bookstore 5. There's my Dave's Bookstore 5. Next. Finish. And it's brought everything back in. Now the one thing I haven't shown you is where we did address, address, address. What we could have done, if I delete that again, and I will go and import it. I'll bring it back in, but again I'll bring it in without using that definition. So I'm back into here again. What I could have done when I was defining all of this, I could have picked up the address, and instead of having that simply having that as the address there, I could have picked up all of that and called it address. And then instead of simply leaving it as a single line, I can make it multi-line. Instead of being no would be one single line. Because I highlighted all of those, I can make that multi-line, and it will take them all in one field. Okay. I will exit that and close that down. Which brings me, whoops, Close that down, a big pardon. Which brings me to our final question, which I will launch. Final question says multi-line entries may be ended on a specific line, a blank line, a specific field, or all of the above. We have 60%. Once again, you don't have to get it right, but you do have to get it. Look at that, another 5 seconds. And we'll close it and share it. And we had 100%, all of the above, which, of course, is correct. Because when I brought that in, the file, Dave's Bookstore, I'm not bringing it in with the one that I had, but when I brought this in and said create the file ACC, and I went to define this, I had some choices. In looking at that, I could say, looking at the properties, looking at the layer information and the field layer. Let me close that 1 second. Move that down so I can get into there. I've frozen myself. I had choices. I could have said end on and specified the field length. I could have ended it on a whole pile of different areas. Okay. So I've managed to get myself into a situation where, let me go back and put my ACC in. Let me throw that layer away. I'll pick this up again. Create a standard layer. It's going to be account. If I show all of those categorized, alphabetic, pull that down so I can see it, and I pick up the field, then over here you can see it is a multi-line yes, offset, and the type is character. The line length is 3. Okay. Now I could change that. I could end the field on a blank line. I could end the field on a defined line, or I could end the field on and tell it which line. Okay. So the choices, as they say, are yours. Okay. Now, you'll see in there, if you look at Dave's bookstore and go back into tutorial, there's also one called Dave's Bookstore Text. There's Text 5 and there's Text. Okay. So, for your homework, my God, we're getting homework. Have a go with Dave's Bookstore and see how you do on your own. The next webinar that we have is on Thursday, and it picks up where this one's left off. Okay, so it's looking at the advanced versions of picking up PDFs, etc. So importing advanced reports. Okay, which leads us to that famous slide which says, any questions? Stunned silence was the loud reply. Either everyone's fallen asleep or everyone is got everything they need. Well, I was shown how to use the floating fields. Yeah, that's what we're picking up in the advanced one. We're looking at the contents of it is looking at multi-line entries, pre-append and post-append, using floating traps, creating floating traps, excluding lines, and using filters on lines. Okay. Thank you. I've just got a compliment. Okay.
Well, you should be getting lots of compliments, Richard. This was a great session, and just to let everyone know that we're now getting a lot more information from Caseware IDEA, and we're trying to post that to the site as well. I think that we have a new article this month on with a video on joins, on how to do joins. So, you know, these things are useful, and I'll remind everyone again, the next slide is on the supplemental information, and remind everyone again, oh, the training, okay, we've got the advanced report importing coming up, and there's the supplemental information.
Okay.
There's the introduction to AuditNet for IDEA users, as well as other value-added tools that you'll find online, some of the other software that is available, ACL, Arbutus, and there's also Excel-based applications, which we are having a whole training session on that with Rich Lanza. So go to the AuditNet site. You can check all these things out, as well as the recent newsletter. We've also launched a poll, a survey recently that deals with the issue of who's training your auditors, and talking about the issue of technology transfer, where you're getting training from one employer and possibly leaving that employer, going to another organization. And we're trying to measure the impact of that and see what kinds of issues revolve around the issue of information technology transfer. So thanks again for joining us today, and thank you, Richard, for a great session. And we'll be back again with you on Thursday with advanced.
We're looking at advanced report importing.
Right, and then next week we'll be doing using statistics and IDEA, followed by continuous monitoring. That webinar, Richard, will be in transit, I believe.
Yep,
or is
I'm afraid so.
Okay, so Richard will
I'm
be
on my way back to Steamboat, so it'll be on the Friday rather than on the Thursday.
Okay, so he will be coming back to the U.S. So join us again, and we look forward to welcoming you to other webinars in this series. Thanks, and have a great day.
Thanks, guys.